This episode, we're going to be taking some trips to Japan. What do I mean by trips to Japan? I'm going to be speaking to two members of Spill.com, Planet Tyro, who've actually been to Japan, who've had the experience, and I want to interview them. I want to ask them some questions. I want to get their inner thoughts on the anime motherland, you know? And I think it would be interesting. I think it would be interesting baseball conversation. So, first guest we have on today. You might have heard this gentleman before on A Couple of Cold Ones and The League of Extremely Ordinary Gentlemen. And if you don't know what those two things are, they are two podcasts, very popular podcasts on Spill.com. My first guest is Kimono Joe. What is up?
Hello, everyone.
Man, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on this episode to talk to us about your experiences in Japan.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. That's been, still to this day, one of the best vacations I've ever had.
And the first time that I was aware of this was when you joined our group page on Spill.com. You actually showed us a video that you made, a compilation video of photos, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So when I saw that, I thought to myself, I need to get this guy on. And obviously, when you was on that Spill podcast, A Couple of Cold Ones, which was a very, very interesting episode, I got to give you props. You were defending bronies. You were defending the whole thing about the clumpers and the clappers. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. And that whole thing, I'm not going to get into that because, you know, that was a whole saga on the website for a couple of weeks. So
oh, yeah.
I'll probably just put a link to that in the description so people can go into that. But I just want to say you held your ground extremely well. I thought you were very composed and you made your points very clearly. So, you know, props to you, sir, for defending bronies and the whole subculture.
Oh, thanks, man.
No problem. And, you know, the funny thing is I'm listening to that and I'm thinking a lot of this is so similar to anime. That podcast could have been about you defending anime because anime gets a lot of the same flack that even My Little Pony gets for liking cartoons or anime is just cartoons. And, you know, to non-anime viewers, you know, you get the same amount of attack, the same that you have to put up with. So,
oh, yeah.
You know, I just thought it would be great to have you on. And, you know, just hearing you talk, I knew that you would be the kind of person I'd want to have on the podcast.
All right. Well, thanks, man.
Yeah. All right. So, Kimono Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into the whole story, tell us a little bit about yourself, my friend. Like, you obviously have spoken to some of the Spill crew. And where do you reside, first of all?
I reside in Austin, Texas. It might throw people off based on my accent, which it's actually more of a speech impediment I've had since I was 8 or so. But I've lived in Texas all my life, and a lot of people assume that I don't live here based on how I speak.
Well, I wouldn't say it doesn't sound like an accent per se to me. And I deal with this is an international anime podcast. Yeah. There's a lot. Like to say, I've worked with people from Greece, Warwick fan, to Britain, to all over. So, you know, personally, people don't even know where I come from. They don't even understand that I'm a British guy because my accent's broken. So, who cares what people think? You sound great. I can understand you. Who cares? So,
all right.
Yeah. So, also, tell us about your interests, just generally as a person. Would you consider yourself a geek/otaku?
Pretty much. I mean, I go by so many different labels, I just don't really care if they're supposed to be more of an insult, like when people are saying, oh, you're such a nerd and whatnot, because, well, yeah, I guess I am, so what?
In today's culture, everyone's a fucking nerd now.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at the times we're living in today where superheroes are they're making the most money in the movie industry right now.
Mm-hmm.
That was considered geek culture 100%. And if you know, in the 70s and 80s, some people thought this would never happen. This would never be, you know, what our whole subculture is based on now. You know, and some people still some people say that about anime, but I feel like anime is the precursor, just like what, you know, comics and cartoons were and how they're big now. I think anime will have its day.
Yeah. Well, I think the only general problem that we have facing it is just, especially in America, is anytime you see cartoons, most of the time they are aimed at children, or if it is supposed to be for a mature audience, it's always a comedy. So it can't really be taken too seriously here by a lot of people because they don't realize, yeah, you can have a action-packed anime, something like Cowboy Bebop for adults, and people just don't make that kind of connection.
Yeah, and that's always my biggest criticism about Western animation. They don't use it enough to tell adult, more compelling, interesting stories. Disney and Marvel, I mean, all right, Marvel and DC, those stories are more adult-ish, even though they're all based on superheroes.
Yeah.
But when you look at Disney, the big names in America and even England, just the whole Western culture, comedy mostly, sitcom, Simpsons, Family Guy, South Park. I don't want to go on and on, but
Yeah.
the word cartoon has a stigma. Cartoon means childish, and some people think that can stretch out to Japanese anime. But unfortunately, as people already know, anime has a culture for being very perverse and hentai-ish or porno-ish, and Japanese crazy. They're crazy, and everything they make is crazy. Look at the crazy shit they make. So, I think it's going to be interesting to talk to someone who's actually been to the motherland.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to tell us just how crazy these Japs are, if they are crazy or not. So, just to continue, so you've always been a fan of anime, grew up with it as well?
I think it's one of those things. It's kind of hard because I think I started off at such an early age that I couldn't even tell the difference between one type of cartoon versus another. Like, the anime I clearly remember from my childhood was the Samurai Pizza Cats.
Yeah, cool.
And then there was, other stuff I always remembered renting from a video store just because I was a young kid and anything that was a cartoon was what I would pick up. But a lot of it, I can't even remember the names of it or even if it was an anime or not. But it's like one of these niche shows that you just can't find anywhere. Like, I recall one of them was a series about this girl and a koala bear stuffed animal she had that would actually come to life. I don't know exactly how it worked, but it would just come to life as magic and take her over to a land where there's just other animals and stuffed animal styles and whatnot. But I think that might have been an anime, if I remember correctly.
There's so much anime out there, I couldn't even tell. But, I think it's fair to say you're just a lover of animation in general, not just Japanese animation, but all of it. You grew up with all animation, so you were a lover. And, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, especially lately because I've started, finding out more and more about some of the French animated series. Lately I've been watching the second season of Walk Fu, and if you've never seen that is a really good series.
Okay, I haven't heard of that. I might look into that.
Yeah.
Walk Fu, you said?
Yeah, WAKFU. And the way I try to describe it to people, the first season of the show is very much like Avatar: The Last Airbender's first season and third season combined together. Yeah, now I will say the second season is nowhere near as strong. It's only because the first season they establish who the threat is in the beginning, but then they establish the world itself and the characters in it, and they do some character development. But then by episode 15, that's when they decide to show just how much of a threat the main villain of the series is. And it becomes this epic 3-part episode to just showcase why this guy is not someone you want to mess with.
Wow.
Yeah. But then the rest of the series for that first season is about them having to deal with him.
You've got my interest, and I always love hearing about the anime collaborations, and even if it's not anime, made by Japan or animated, I'm interested. You've got my curiosity. So people, you heard that? What through FU that? Fuck you. I'm only playing. But yeah, I mean, people, look that up. I'm going to look into that as well. And, we might be bringing that back up on the podcast, and maybe we'll even have you on here again to speak about it.
Okay. I will also say, though, that just a little bit of information on that series. It is based off of a online, tactical RPG game that's from France as well. The walk through the game, but then they have the series that's kind of taking place in the same world.
Sounds like an established franchise then.
Yeah, because before Wakfu, there was just another video game called Dofus, and Wakfu is kind of the sequel to it in a way. Yeah.
Cool. Cool. All right, so before we get into the whole Japanese, just lastly, do you have any anime favorites, any anime you just want to quickly mention before we get into the meat of the podcast?
I would say that pretty much my all-time favorite has probably got to be FLCL. I don't know what it was about that series, but I've rewatched that so many times, and I think it was just something that blew my mind so much, and that's why I love it still to this day.
It is one of the most beloved anime of all time, actually. A lot of people, a genre breaker, the one that gets people into anime. And, so I have, since you brought this up, remember that?
Yeah.
Right? I actually have the limited edition collector's box set of that, only 1,500 prints were ever made. And I think it's worth about the equivalent of $500 right now. So,
Nice.
Since you brought it up, Joe, I'm just boasting about that. Just because, just whoever cares. I know you hate me, people. I know you hate me. But anyway. Yeah, man. FLCL, love it to death. All right, Kimono, Joe. So now, the trip to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
The very first question, my friend. When did you go and how did this trip come about?
I went back in midsummer of '09. And how it came about, my younger brother was just finishing up his senior year, and there was this program at his school that he told me about called EF Tours, which the EF stands for Education First. And what it is, it's where a tour group can be formed at a school, or they sponsor it or whatever, something like that. If they get enough people to sign up for it, they will go to the said location they agreed on. And It just so happened that the trip was going to be to Japan. And it was going to be like a 11-day trip where we would stop in through Tokyo, Hakone, Kyoto, Hiroshima, and Osaka. And basically, the price for the entire thing was about $3,500.
Okay.
But that covered all airfare, travel expenses, hotels, and at least 2 meals a day.
Wow. And was that for each of you, or was that a group price?
It was for individual.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really nice deal, and I was a little hesitant at first, only because I wasn't sure if I should spend that much money all at once.
So what motivated you? Is Japan a place you always wanted to go? Or did you just see this as an opportunity that you had to grasp?
It was one of those things that my younger brother and I, we've always talked about that we wanted to visit there at least once, like one of those kind of bucket list type things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. No, that's really, really cool. All right, man. So how many of you actually ended up going in? Was it you, your brother, and someone else, or just you and your brother?
Well, the thing was that it wasn't just one school. They had like 2 other schools join us. And we kind of like picked them up when we were traveling from Texas over to California, which the connecting flight would then go to Japan. And
how long was that flight?
Ooh, it was a pretty grisly, close to, I think, 11 hours, if I remember. And it was not a good flight.
Oh, boy. I've heard that's one of the longest flights you can ever take, actually, a flight to Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, but the thing that was just made it so bad was a combination of a couple of things. One being that for whatever reason, I was compelled to just have a hamburger from a Burger King area in the mall cafeteria or food court, whatever.
Yeah.
And the problem was I had not had fast food burgers like that in a couple of years because I had been like trying to eat healthy at the time.
Uh-oh, I can see where this is going.
Yeah, so on the flight, I just had the worst stomach pains, and with all the cabin pressure, it just felt like it wasn't going to go anywhere. It just kind of stayed where it was.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I hope there wasn't an explosion of sorts.
No, because that was the other thing. I was trying to be polite to other people, but because I was really gassy, and I would try to go and use just the restroom to try to get it out, but then for whatever reason, it was like a Murphy's Law. I couldn't pass any gas when I was in the bathroom.
Damn.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a great start to your trip.
Yeah. And I wasn't the only one. Everyone else was like really haggard and tired by the end of the flight.
Yeah.
But trust me, whenever we got off that plane, we got to the hotel finally. I was out in like 2 minutes hitting that bed.
All right. So since this was part of like a school-based project, did you have to like follow a certain guideline, like a tour guideline, or were you free to roam around Japan on your own? What was the kind of situation with that?
They did have a set schedule and what we were going to be doing. Like the first 2 days, we were in Tokyo, and we pretty much like got to check out like a lot of local temples. We also had like options, like if we wanted to go to this area of the city or another one. And then we would have one free day, but that free day would also be kind of short because we would have to use that day as our connecting day to go to Hakone.
That's cool. Right. So, all right. So you're in Japan,
Mhm.
and when you went there, as I just asked, it was like a school-based thing.
Yeah.
Was the emphasis on learning about the historical aspect of Japan or the landscape? Is that what they were trying to focus on? Is that what this trip was actually about? In regards to the company that paid for this and what they wanted you to do in Japan?
Pretty much, because when we were there, we had a tour guide, and she would give us like the history about the temples we were at, and every so often we also got to check out some of the palaces in Japan, like the old like a lot of the Edo period castles that are still standing today,
Mm.
and like just kind of learning some of the interesting stories behind them. Like I forget which one it was, but in Osaka there was one castle where they kind of built in a security alarm, and this is like medieval security alarm, where whenever you would step down on the floorboards, you would hear kind of like this chirping noise from above you. And apparently they made that so during the night, if there was any assassination attempts, they would be hearing like bird noises during the night because someone would be stepping on those planks of wood and all that.
Yeah, that's cool. So you got to see some real life anime traps in there. Real life anime traps, real life traps of the actual castles and temples and whatnot. All right. So you got off the plane. You went to see these monuments and stuff like that. What was the atmosphere like in Japan? What did you when you got off the plane? You looked around. Give us your general thoughts on Japan when you got there and what you thought of it.
Well, it was kind of a small culture shock, just getting used to how everything's set up. Like, especially during the daytime when there are, like, during the rush hour times from, like, morning to maybe about 9 or so, and then rush hour after 5.
Good weather, bad weather out there?
It was actually pretty good weather. We were really, really fortunate throughout our entire trip. We had good weather. It did rain maybe one day, I believe. But outside of that, it was still pretty much perfect weather the entire time. Now, the thing I will say, though, unfortunately, because we were not the only group going to Japan, there was like another EF tour group that was going to be going a week or so later after us. And man, those poor people. Apparently, somewhere during their trip, someone I forgot what flu it was going on at the time. That was the big scare. Like, I think it might have been swine flu back in '09.
That was the one, swine flu, yeah.
Yeah, and so the people had to be quarantined to like, I don't know where. I think it was like whatever hotel they were staying at. And they pretty much lost out on most of the trip. And I think they did at least get their money back and whatnot, but still, that was pretty rough.
Boy, good for you though. Sucks to be them, but luckily you had the good time and you went around June, July. Was that right?
Yeah,
So that
about that time.
the weather was better, much better that time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's draw some contrast. Prior to your trip, what was your impressions of Japan? Now, be honest. Even if you had some prejudice, something, give us your contrast on your impression of Japan before and after. What did you think of the culture of the people? Did you think they were going to be stuck up? Did you think it was going to be weird?
Well, I didn't have so much problems with some of the people. I mean, I had some interactions every now and then with some of the, like, locals, but I didn't talk too much to them because I tried learning at least a little bit of Japanese before going over there. Like, I had a cassette tape of Japanese phrases and whatnot.
Yeah.
The problem was, anytime I tried to speak to someone, I would get this anxiety and my mind would just kind of go blank on me. And I couldn't recall how, like, the proper way to phrase what I was going to say, or...
Did they just stare at you blankly while you were trying to get your words together? Adiato, or something like that?
Yeah, and that's why I didn't try too much to interact with anyone unless I practiced that phrase at least a couple of times before going over. But, I mean, the worst of it was probably when my group, which consisted of my brother, a friend of his, and 3 other kids from his school, we at one point were in Kyoto visiting they have a Kyoto manga museum.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and we were trying to head back to our hotel, but this one wasn't part of the schedule of it. This was on a free day. So the problem was we were trying to figure out how to get back to the hotel, but we couldn't figure out the bus transportation routes.
Yeah.
And I just felt so awkward and stupid when I'm trying to ask the bus driver if he knew what route was supposed to take, and ended up that we just had to call a cab, and luckily he spoke a little bit of English to let us know, he was going to get us back to the hotel.
Yeah. So how was the English out there? I mean, did you feel, because you're English speaking, did you think it was not as bad to kind of get across to a lot of people? Was there a lot of English speakers out there? I know it's a general question, but I think some people might want to know. Well, your experience in '09 anyway, but did English help much? Or did you find it was a big hindrance being English speaking in Japan?
Well, I've talked about this with a friend of mine who goes to Japan pretty regularly, and it's one of those things. It's based on the tourist location. Like anywhere that gets a lot of tourists, Tokyo, for instance, there's going to be at least some people that speak English a little bit, and then there will be some people that are a little bit more fluent in it. It's kind of like if you go to parts of America and there's like another language going on in one part, there's at least a good chance that people speak it. Like here in Texas, there's a lot of people that speak English and Spanish since we're so close to Mexico.
Exactly.
And, like up in areas like New York, since it's such a cultural melting pot, you got tons of people speaking English and Arabic and Chinese and whatnot.
Yeah, I know it might seem like a very silly comment, but just interesting to know. And now let's get to you're on an anime and manga podcast. Let me ask you some anime and manga infused Japanese questions. You just said you went to the manga museum. Now, how the hell was that?
Well, I was kind of wondering what it was going to be like, because you did have to pay to get in, of course, but the thing was, we didn't have a guide for it, so we had to kind of infer a lot of it based on what we could read. Like, they did have at least a couple of plaques translated into English, but it was originally a school, and I don't know who. I think it might have had something to do with Tezuka. Like, at one point, this was a school he went to, or something like. I'm not entirely sure. But basically, it was a school converted into this library, which it was just packed. Like, every hallway had shelves and shelves of manga. And they did have like original prints of books and whatnot, which that was kind of interesting to look through. And they did have display cases over like particular books and whatnot, but if anything, it was less of a museum and more of just like a library. Because when me and my group were walking around, we just saw like people, I mean, locals to Kyoto, and they were just sitting around taking books off the shelves and reading them. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And since you brought up, I know again, kind of a little bit off topic, did you find the currency exchange was good for you out there, dollars to yen?
I can't remember how it was at the time. I think we were a little, like the American dollar was under the yen, but I took roughly, like, I got a bunch of money that I had saved up for the trip and then money on the side, plus my parents, since like it's that whole thing going on a big trip, they gave me a little extra spending cash, but
nice.
Total, I had probably like 800 American dollars worth of yen.
Ah, that sounds good. And see, this is going to relate to the last question, which is going to be talking about your bounty and what you came back with. But the manga museum, was there anything anime related you got to participate when you were out in Japan?
Not particularly. I mean, my brother and I, and like two other people, we did spend like at least a good time in Akihabara while we were in Tokyo. And when we were in Osaka, they have pretty much a 3-story tall building that is nothing but Gundam models.
Nice.
Yeah.
So what was, tell us what you could tell about the otaku culture in Japan, the anime, manga, otaku culture. I know, because your trip sounds like you were, obviously, it was more of an educational thing. You wasn't going as a free person to do what you want. So, I understand your experience might have been limited. You couldn't maybe not have done as much anime-ish stuff you did, but I'm just going to ask you broadly, all the anime experience you had out there, just give us the rundown. What did you get to experience out there, and how was the culture, the anime, manga, otaku culture out there in Japan in 2009?
Well, it's one of those things you will see, like, anime stuff on the outskirts, but it is one of those things if you're in particular shopping areas, that's where you'll see it everywhere, like Akihabara, for instance. And, like, it was kind of interesting how they have the floors to the shops set up, because every building, it would be like a small, maybe like 30 by 30 room, and they would have like stacked up on top of each other, and they would all be kind of like divided in whatever particular items you're looking for. Like the first floor was always souvenirs and like crazy knick-knack stuff, like novelty flash drives of like anime characters and whatnot. The floor above that would probably be like the the CDs. Above that would be the DVDs and games, and above that would be like the model kits and whatnot. And then, of course, below is where they keep all the porn.
The hentai, the good stuff.
Yep.
Yay!
Which I will warn people, if you are not used to looking at porn, because in that area, like, all you have to do is just step through the doorway when you walk down the steps, and it's just everywhere.
Easily accessible? Is that what you're saying?
For the most part. I mean, they do have things like shrink wrapped, but I mean, they got like posters on the wall, they got videos playing on screens.
Explicit?
The what?
Explicit videos?
More or less. I mean, because we were in one bookstore, and this one was kind of weird because this was like both a bookstore, but also like half of the store was also where they kept the porn. So that's another thing to watch out for. Sometimes you have to kind of be aware of what area you're standing in some of these stores, because some of them are just merged together. But yeah. I'm just looking around, just flipping through some mangas and whatnot, and I turn my head around and there's a TV screen behind me, and I look up and there are like these two women bent over in these like pulsating tentacles all around them, and I was like, whoa, that's not what I was ready for.
Hey.
Yeah.
Man, they know how to advertise.
Oh, yeah.
And, the Japanese are known for their fan service in anime, so it's nice to hear when you go to the motherland, they got that shit on the wall, just advertise, come and get it.
Oh, yeah.
Flash neon lights. So
yeah. And the problem was trying to get some of my, because mostly the group I was with, and since I was the oldest, and whenever it was like our free day, I was the one put in charge. And it was a pain in the ass to try to get those guys out of the shop when we needed to go.
You had to be the responsible one. That sucks.
But, and also another side note, if you do try to purchase anything in the pornographic section, be very careful what you are buying, because you may be getting something you do not expect coming up.
Okay, you're going to have to elaborate. Come on, give us the details. What are you talking about?
Well, this wasn't what I bought, but one of the people we traveled with, he just had an impulse to buy, and he bought one book. So he takes it back to the hotel, he opens it up, and apparently he was just not prepared for a story that involved basically I'm assuming like high school girl being overpowered by a bunch of middle school to elementary kids with massively huge dicks raping her.
Oh, yeah. Sounds like good old-fashioned hentai to me.
Yeah, he wasn't prepared for it. Now, this guy, I will say, he was probably one of the few things I really disliked about the trips, only because the kid, he had ADHD, and for whatever reason, he didn't bring his meds with him.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so he did so much stuff that by the end of the trip, I was ready to throw him out of a window if I got the chance.
Jeez.
Because what he did after buying this book and finding that he didn't like it, instead of doing the sensible thing of maybe just putting it back in the bag, putting it back in the shopping bag, since of course they got shopping bags that are just dark colored or non-transparent bags. And just put it in the trash can, like a sensible person would. He instead decided to shred it up, put it in the trash can, and then leave it outside of the elevator on the floor that we were staying at. Yeah.
Not very clever, and you guys are visitors.
Oh, yeah. And that was the kind of stuff that really irritated me about him, is that he didn't seem to have any respect for, the people around us and whatnot. Because I'll tell you, the worst of it all that he did was, while we were in Osaka, there's a chain of restaurants in Japan called Moss Burger, MOS Burger. And unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to try it, but he went to one of the places, ordered some food, and, if you are in Japan and you don't know how to speak English, they got all the foods out on picture menus and whatnot. All you got to do is point out what you want and then hold up how many fingers of what that item you want. So he orders whatever meal. He comes back to the hotel room, and we are on the 15th floor. Keep that in mind because it will be important later.
Okay.
But he apparently did not like the food, and he blamed it, saying that they got the order wrong or something. I don't know. I wasn't there with him when he ordered it, and I'm sure he got it wrong himself. But again, instead of doing a sensible thing of either just eating it begrudgingly because it's food, you don't waste food, or just put it in the trash, he instead decided to throw it out the window of the 15th floor hotel room we were staying in.
What is up with this guy, man?
Yeah, I don't know what his deal was, but like I said, I wanted to throw him out that window afterwards.
You should have done it, man. I think the laws are different out there in Japan. You might have gotten away with it. Oh, man, I definitely empathize with that situation. There's always a bad apple on these trips, man. Take it from someone from personal experience. I went to Amsterdam and I had a bad apple. That's another story, but yeah, I feel your pain, man. Right. And hopefully that didn't put too much of a damper on your trip on a whole. But unfortunately, there always are downsides to the trip. And to be honest with you, hopefully that was the worst of it, and it wasn't from actual Japan. It was just from some arsehole you had accompanying you. So.
Oh yeah, most of anything that was bad about the trip itself was never really where I was or what was going on. It was generally something like in my group or like, for instance, when I was going on that flight and whatnot. Like those were the only downsides.
Okay, so let me ask you another question. In America and on the internet in general, every year there's always an anime title that's being hailed. In 2009, was there any one title you just saw everywhere? Because I believe at the time, Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood was airing and it was like being blown up everywhere. Was there any title you just saw consistently throughout Japan they was hyping? Anything like that?
Yeah, actually, it was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, the second series, or the one that's more closer to the manga that they were touting.
Exactly.
But outside of that, I did see a lot of K-On!, like, because that was apparently just starting to get pretty popular. Like, whenever we were in those shopping areas like Akihabara, I would be seeing posters of it everywhere. I would see, like, signs up in the CD section of the floor, up in the manga section. I don't think the anime was out yet, but it was probably coming out pretty soon, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Also, I think it was one of the things going on with Evangelion at the time. I don't know if it was like the first of the new movies were about to come out, or...
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Yeah.
Because I would constantly see, like, advertisements to get, like, phone covers that are, like, have the Ava designs on them, or, like, the logos of the shows and whatnot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's always something, whether it's Japan or any country. Well, the way the internet is today, it seems like we celebrate a title every year, one in particular. Last year, I was definitely Sword Art Online, and in 2009, I definitely remember it was Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, so not really surprised there. So anyway, we're going to come back to this anime topic in a bit, but I just want to cover some more general questions anyway.
All right.
Here's a question some people might find it touchy, but this is a question most people want to know deep down. Whether you like it or not, people, I know you want to know this. Now, again, it might be touchy to some people, but I think it's an interesting question. What's your ethnic origin?
I am Caucasian.
Okay, American, Caucasian. You're a white dude.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. So, in Japan, did you have any, did you feel that you were treated a certain way because you were white, or, any cultural interesting mishaps or anything like that? Or did you just feel you were just seen as any other... Obviously, you're seen as a tourist, without a doubt. But I just mean, as you're a different ethnic origin, did you feel any kind of way out there?
Not particularly. I mean, a lot of the people we encountered were polite, and I'm sure that there might have been just people off on the street that were probably just looking at us like, oh God, it's Americans again. But I think, like, I do have, like, two encounters that I just thought were kind of odd. Like, while we were in the Kyoto Manga Museum, every place has, of course, those, like, coin machines where you can get the little capsule, like, prizes and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So I was there was one that was kind of low to the ground, so I was, like, looking at it, and I'm crouched down. And I looked to my side, and there were these two little kids, and they're probably, like, maybe 7 and 8 or so. Mm-hmm. Like, just real young kids. And they're just staring at me, and I guess I just looked odd to them or something. And I thought that I was blocking their way to get to something, so I stood up, and I just kind of gestured with my hand, like, oh, did you want to get to this machine? And I was letting them go first. But then, like, the older of the two, he pretty much grabbed the hand of the other one, and they ran off. And I was like, well, that was kind of odd, but okay.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I'm not, like, terribly tall. I'm roughly about 5'9", and I think that's, like, currently now, that's kind of almost the average for most people there. Like, I wasn't towering over people, but there were, like, a lot of people that were maybe just, like, 3 inches or so shorter than me for the most part.
Yeah.
The only other thing was while we were in Tokyo, we were in Shibuya, I think, or Shinjuku. It's one of these other big shopping areas.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing I did not know is that I forgot what the population is, like where they're from, but I thought at first that they might have been Jamaican or something to that effect. But the thing is that I didn't realize it at the time, but these were just guys trying to get us to go to their shopping stores and whatnot.
Yeah.
Like how it happened was I was taking photos of like some of the architecture around us and like just taking shots of like the alleyways and whatnot. And I turn and I see my younger brother and his friend talking with this guy. So I walk up and the guy's greeting me as well. He's like, "Hey, American!" He's like bringing up his fist and like a fist bump. And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I thought he was just like another tourist that was just happy to see other people. But then he goes, "Hey, come to our shop. We're having a special." And I was like, "You guys got shops here?" Well, okay. And I thought like the shop was like maybe right behind us. Now, granted, this is still like something I regret because it was probably like a really bad idea and could have gone horribly wrong really quickly.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it didn't go in any terrible way because basically his shop was down an alley from the main shopping area and around a building. But the thing is I already said I'd come and look at it, and I didn't want to be rude and whatnot. So, and my brother and his friend, they were freaking out because they thought we were going to be kidnapped at this point.
Yeah, sold on the black market.
Yeah. But really, the guy was honest. He just took us to his shop, and it was just like a lot of really loud, really like just not clothing I would really wear at all. Like,
Okay.
It's the kind of clothing that you see kids in, like, L.A. who like to think that they're gangsters, but they're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
And so we just looked around and played like we were that we might buy something, but then we decided, look at the time. We got to get out of here. But
Yeah.
it didn't end there, unfortunately. Once we got back out to the main street again, ambulance was coming down, so people are parting to the sides.
Uh-oh.
Myself and my brother's friend, we jump back. My brother jumps forward, so he's left on the other side of the street by himself, and there's another one of these guys coming up to talking to him.
Oh, shit.
And my brother as well is a person who hates to be rude and say no to people. So this guy says, "Come to our shop," because there's apparently a bunch of these guys. Like I said, I don't know where these guys hail from, but apparently there's just a large population of them in Japan, and they mainly just work out in the like Shibuya area. But the only problem was that this guy's shop was up on the third floor of a building, so we had to go up a couple of flights of stairs, and again, same thing. Like, in fact, the guys were selling pretty much the same amount of clothing and the exact same items. And again, we just had to do the whole, "Oh, look at the time, we gotta go."
You Americans are so polite. You see, us English, I was so rude. I'll be a "Good day, sir. I do not have time for this. I stick up my nose to you." No. Just walked off. But you Americans are so much more polite than Americans. So I mean British, so... Hey, man, I think you get those kind of swindlerism hustlers in every country. So
yeah.
It's a shame you guys got suckered into that. But hey, man, people gotta eat.
I know. I mean, and that was just a thing. That was just something I didn't expect to happen. Because I knew there was going to be, like, people maybe trying to push some kind of item for us to buy and whatnot. But I just didn't expect it to come about that way out of, like, left field.
Well, it happens, but yeah, it's definitely amusing. You guys getting taken away like that,
Yeah.
and just be grateful you didn't get sold in the black market.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, Americans, I think they go for a pretty high price, especially white Caucasian Americans.
Yeah.
All right, man. So I feel like we're getting to the midway to the end of this. So I'm just gonna ask you some other questions.
Okay.
I think you kind of touched on this a bit. Do you have any general crazy stories, any crazy scenes? And I'll tell you what I mean. Japan's is known for this weird place that sell panties and vending machines and crazy food and shit like that. Do you see anything crazy, any crazy happenings out there?
Outside of the guys trying to hustle us, there wasn't like too many like really, really crazy things going on.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of vending machines around, and they do sell like quite a bit of stuff. Like they had a vending machine where you could buy like T-shirts that would come out in like a can that was about the size of maybe a can of beans or so.
Wow.
There was also like just kind of interesting stuff that just threw me for a loop at some points. Like while we were traveling in this one area, I was stopping to get something to drink out of a vending machine, and I'm looking through the different items, and I see something that has like pictures of the custard pudding that they always show in Japan, or the flan as it's pretty much styled here in Texas or other parts of America. So I just buy it thinking, oh, this is just must be like a kind of like a cream soda in a way, only it's flavored custard pudding.
Mm-hmm.
And I open it up and I drink it and I realize there's chunks in it. And I was like, whoa, what the? And I look inside of it. Really, it's just a can of chopped up custard pudding with like a little kind of like pudding sauce in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, damn, they're quite industrious, aren't they? They put everything and anything into cans, don't they?
Yeah. Like, it was just something I didn't expect to see. Like, they do have Fanta with these, like, almost kind of like those jelly or I forget what they're called. Like, if you've ever had a boba tea, it's like those tapioca pudding balls.
Ah, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's like they got a lot of Fanta drinks that have that kind of stuff in it already.
No, that's pretty cool. Pretty interesting for us that haven't been to Japan. Good to know. All right, man. So let's summarize a couple other things as well. I know we might be going over old territory here, but you know what? Since we're coming to the end of this wrap up ish, obviously I'll give you a chance to add anything you feel, anything else you want to say. But first of all, in summary, give us your best things, the things you love about Japan, the things you don't like about Japan.
The things I love about Japan, of course, there's like the vending machines, because there's like one pretty much every few blocks.
Mm-hmm.
And especially because I was just addicted to royal milk tea that they sold in all these vending machines. Like, that stuff might as well have been my crack the entire trip. Which, it's one of those things that is still something I am still trying to replicate or chase here in the States, but can't figure out how to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say the only thing that is kind of an issue to have while in Japan is that they don't really have trash cans anywhere. Like, they do have recycling drop-offs.
Mm-hmm.
But if you, I didn't know this until afterwards, but apparently if you go and you get something to eat or something that, like if you're getting food from a street vendor and whatnot,
yep,
it's better to eat it where you are standing because they will have a trash can that you can dispose of it, as opposed to getting something and then walking around with it while you're looking at other stuff. Like, while we were in Osaka, I ended up, because I wanted to try them so badly, those little octopus dumplings.
Yep. Oh, yep. That's definitely something I want to try as well one day. And how were they?
Oh, they were pretty good. Of course, I might as well have been that Andrew Zimmer guy from Bizarre Foods. Like, everyone in the group was always questioning why the hell I was trying so many different things. And my response is, I'm in Japan. I'm not going to get another chance to try this again, so I'm going to get it now.
That's damn right. Exactly.
But
what's wrong with these people?
But the other problem was just that after I had finished eating them and I wasn't anywhere, I couldn't find a trash can. And I didn't want to be rude and just leave my trash all over the ground, especially because in the morning, you would see people cleaning up the front area of their shop.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to be disrespectful and just toss it somewhere. And
Of course.
it wasn't until finally I managed to find a police officer, and like I managed to get the right words around and ask him, "Do you have a trash can?" And he managed to provide me with one to dispose of my trash.
Did you find out generally why that is? Because I know in London, apparently a lot of our stations don't have trash just because of bombs. Bomb warnings is a place to hide concealed bombs, or I don't know. Did you ever get to find out the reason why they don't have a lot of trash cans out there?
Yeah, it actually was for pretty much the same reason. Like I forget when it occurred, but apparently some years ago, Japan had some like domestic terrorism going on.
Yeah.
And they weren't leaving bombs in trash cans, but what they were doing was they were transporting parts to bombs through trash cans. And so now instead of trash cans, they got just the recycling cans, but it's that kind of like a one-way in type situation. Like they got the little rubber seals over it. Like after you drink your soda or your whatever bottled drink, you just place it in little flaps and it'll take care of it. But yeah, the whole recycling thing, it wasn't so much something to hate. It was just more of an annoyance and something to try to keep in mind, especially since I ended up, like, if I couldn't find an area to dispose of my trash, I ended up having to just put it in the bag I was carrying and have like a bag full of trash by the end of the day.
I think there's a big emphasis on a lot of London now of recycling.
Yeah.
And off topic, Penn and Teller did a whole episode. If you watch Penn and Teller's bullshit, they did a whole episode kind of explaining why recycling is kind of bullshit, because a lot of the methods we use to recycle give the same amount of toxic fumes as just putting your trash in the trash. Again, I don't want to make it an environmental debate, but I'm just saying I'm lazy. I do respect people who do recycle, but ultimately, a lot of people proving it's not. It's I want to say it's a waste of time, but it ultimately cultivates to the same process.
Yeah.
But I mean, for Japan, obviously they've got a more serious reason not to have trash cans available, which is obviously, like I said, we have that as well in London. It does sound like an annoyance. It would bother me. If you lived in Japan, I'm sure you might know how to go about getting rid of your trash. And obviously, if you're a tourist, it's probably even more difficult because you don't speak the language and you have some trash and you don't know where to throw it. So, I can see how that's an annoyance.
Yeah.
All right. Was there anything else you didn't really like about Japan?
No, generally, it was like a really great trip, and there wasn't too many things that were an issue. I mean, again, it was only like stuff with that one kid and maybe some of the people from the other tour group we were with, and them being pretty obnoxious at some points.
So what's this always hearing about the toilets in Japan? They're so weird, and some are luxurious and others are just straight up crazy. What's your experience with the toilet? Come on, I have to ask. Japan and for their toilets. What's your experience with the toilets in Japan?
Well, I don't recall like being like having too many crazy ones. I mean, the ones we had in the hotel were those like really nice ones that have like the heated seats and everything, and also like the built-in bidet function to it.
Nice.
But I will say that was also something to try to get used to, because like sitting down on a toilet seat that's already heated, it was kind of weird because for me, it kind of made the impression like I just sat down on the toilet right after someone else was done using it.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like it was one of those things, it's awkward and weird at first, but then you start getting used to it and you kind of realize, hey, this isn't that bad.
I kind of like how this feels.
Yeah.
But then you get the water shot right up your arse, you're like, God damn it!
And I will say that was kind of a interesting thing, because they have buttons all over the side, and they just have like simple pictures on them as to how they work. Like this one's gonna spray this one's gonna heat up the seat and whatnot. But outside of that, the only crazier thing I found toilet-wise was going to a public bathroom and seeing a sign on how to properly sit on a toilet seat. which I was like, that's kind of odd.
Yeah.
Because basically the photo, like, description, like, it would show, like, someone as if they were sitting up with their feet on the lid of the toilet and squatting over it, and they're saying, no, that's not correct. Or someone sitting on the toilet in the reverse direction and saying, no, that's not correct.
Oh, that's so funny.
And then just a regular sit down, normal style. That's the correct way to use the toilet.
I would like to. Okay, you see, I nearly trapped myself. I was gonna say I would like to see someone facing the wall and sit in the toilet, but I would not like to see that. I'm just saying that as a hypothetical. I think South Park had an episode about sitting in the toilet in reverse. Actually, that was really funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've heard there's some crazy Japanese toilets. They range from super high tech to TVs in the toilet bowl, music playing, computer games integrated, into the complete reverse where you actually have to squat and shit on the floor kind of toilets in Japan as well.
Oh, yeah. I did encounter one that was like that last one you said of, like, that you just kind of squat over it. Like, it, in a way, it kind of looks like if you took a urinal but just built it into the ground and had it facing downwards.
Exactly, yeah.
Which I never used that because I just saw it and thought, nope, this is too weird for me.
To people who watch hentai, you might have seen that a lot. They have a lot of, well, you can call me a pervert or whatever, but I've seen a lot of hentai where they've shown girls using the toilet and you get to see that exactly drawn out. I know I'm putting myself out there, people, but I'm just trying to show I understand what my man Kimono Joe's saying. But yeah, that's cool. That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
Go on.
I was trying to think of something else, like, I couldn't. I think I was going somewhere again with the toilet, but I couldn't remember what. Oh, well, just forget about it. Oh, I did want to touch up on one thing that I forgot to mention in the earlier part of the show.
Yeah, do you want to touch on anything else before we move on?
Anyone that wants to visit Japan, I will say you should make it a point to stay somewhere that's outside of the big cities like Tokyo and Kyoto and Osaka and all that. Because at one point, we stayed for, like, technically a day, but it was like a kind of intermission type vacation spot where for half the day we drove from Tokyo and got to Hakone, and we stayed the night in Hakone, and then we left Hakone the next morning to go to Kyoto. But I will say, if you ever are going to Japan, you should make it a point to visit Hakone, because that's where they got like the more natural stuff going on. Like they have the giant bronze Buddha statue there. But also the hotel we stayed at was actually a more traditional, like Japanese style hotel with, like, they had the futons in the cabinet that you would roll out in the living area. And also they had the hot springs there too.
Oh, Japanese hot spring, legendary. We see that, and that's one of the things that so many of us envy in anime. I mean, in almost any anime you can imagine, there's always a wonderful hot spring scene, whether it's got to do with beautiful girls in the hot tub or just a guy relaxing, and it's natural. It's not like the westernized mechanical hot tubs. It's all rocky, and the water, it looks so natural and beautiful. Did you get to experience that too, Kimono Joe?
Indeed I did. And I feel sorry.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah. And I feel sorry for some of the other people in our group, because the thing was, it was a public hot spring, and they had two versions of it at the hotel. They had one that was inside and one that was outside. And what they would do is that they would mark one for men and one for women, and then they would just kind of swap it out. And you could tell by, like, they would put a kind of a sign over the door, and it was color-coded as to who goes to what area.
Yeah.
And so during the night, that's when me and the few of us that did go, because a lot of people were not big on the idea of being naked around other people that they didn't know. And that was a thing to kind of get over. And as I told my brother and like the two other guys that were willing to try it, like you basically treat this like if you're standing at a urinal in a public restroom. You keep your eyes forward, you don't look to the sides, you don't make conversation, and you just don't look down.
If you wanted to, could you go the swimming trunks route? But if you did, that wouldn't be traditional, would it? Or would you feel that you wouldn't be doing the experience justice?
Well, the problem was we didn't bring any swimming trunks, and I think there actually might have been a sign that said that they didn't want it, because they did have like a sign, because they have the area where you can change into your clothes, and then like have your towel wrap around you and whatnot to go into the bathroom. But like, if I recall correctly, they had a sign like just kind of displaying like the kind of etiquette about going to or using the bath there. Like, one, you got to wash yourself at the little sink areas that they provide, and you know it's that whole thing that they show in the animes where they got like a small little like handheld tub of water, and they just rinse themselves off with lather, and then they wash themselves off, and then they can get into the hot tub area. And I think there was just like other etiquette things like don't bring your towel into the tub. And I don't know if they had one or not about swim trunks. I'm guessing they might have, only because they didn't want people like tracking drips of water down the hallways and whatnot.
Yeah.
In which, if you had swim trunks, that would probably like be like a very highly likely thing to happen.
Of course.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And, I would just say, well, in Rome, do what the Romans do.
Yeah, that was my approach as well. It was just that there were so many people in our group that were not willing to try it just based on the fact that they would have to be naked around other people. But, I mean, I enjoyed that hot tub so much, the hot spring so much that I went again in the morning before we left. And that one, as I said, they swapped out like the locations of it. So this time it was one that was outside. So I'm sitting there in this like natural hot spring water running over these stones and just listening to the birds in the morning. And I was like, this is tranquility right here for me.
Sounds friggin' awesome, man. Sounds like one of the must-do things I want to do in my life. My bucket list, my own personal bucket list. Take a naked hot spring retreat and just listen to the Japanese sounds of the wildlife. I'm jealous. I'm jealous of you, sir. That is really cool, man.
Thank you.
All right, let's... I'm coming to the end of my questioning. This isn't the end of the podcast. So I'm going to give you a chance to add anything else because I think you've got some more to say. But I just want to ask you, do you have any more crucial advice you want to give to people that haven't been to Japan based on your experience?
Yeah. One, and this is like the really important one, at least learn a little bit of Japanese, like at least enough to pass as a tourist. You don't need to be phonetic in it, because if you're in the high tourist area, they will have people that speak enough English to help you out. But they do really appreciate it if you know, like, at least key phrases like, do you know where this is? Do you have this item? How much is this item? So on and so forth. And the other thing, make sure you are pretty healthy whenever you go, because like I said, there was the whole swine flu stuff going on, and while we were in Japan, I noticed there were a lot of just Japanese citizens walking around with the little, like, surgical masks over their face. Because that is one thing. They are really paranoid about getting sick, which I don't blame them.
Yeah.
Because even, like, going into the hotel rooms, in the lobbies, they would have, like, almost these stations, and I think they were offering mouthwash or something for people to use, like just something to clean out their mouths before they spoke to anyone, just on the off chance they're going to be breathing germs and whatnot on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I will say, like, of course, like I mentioned, be at least responsible and respectable towards the culture. Like I said, don't be like that asshole that was with my group who was throwing food out the window and whatnot.
Hey man, I know people might pick up. Of course not, but hey man, it's good to respect the people, man. I mean, we all want to have good relations with other cultures, so
Yeah.
please, people, please keep that in mind. I know some people it's just natural common sense, but to other people they need reminding. So, Kimono Joe, thank you for pointing that out. People, have respect for Japan. Have some goddamn respect. Anything else, Joe?
I don't think that.
Right, let me reform the question. I'll make it even easier for you. Okay.
All right.
If you were to go to Japan again, what would you do differently?
Of course, like I said, learn more of the language, just so I, especially also practice it too, since I was getting anxiety trying to speak to someone when I was trying to ask them anything.
Mm-hmm.
Things I would also do differently. Of course, like just kind of plan out your day and where you're going to go and whatnot a little bit better too, because I nearly got separated from my group a little bit because we were looking through this one like mountain meadow type area in Hakone where you could see Mount Fuji like pretty like not off on the horizon. You could actually see it and look up and see where the top of it is.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem was that I got sidetracked by something because I was a little too far away, and I nearly missed because we had to take one of those little trolley cars, or I forget what they're called. They're the little carts that are suspended on wires that take you up from one base of the mountain to the next.
I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name myself, but yeah.
Yeah. Like, just be careful of that kind of stuff. And also, like I mentioned, though, if you're going to go there, be prepared to spend a lot of money, too, because I pretty much spent nearly everything that I brought over there.
Good.
Yeah.
You know what? I want to ask you, because I'm sure you got some more things you want to tell us, maybe some more stories, because I know you've answered basically all of my questions, but I want to squeeze you like a sponge and get every little piece of Japan out of you. But before we do that, I don't want to forget, can you tell us, when you came back from Japan, what was your bounty? What did you end up bringing back? What did you spend all your money on, Joe?
Oh, I got quite a bit of stuff. Like, of course, I got typical souvenirs for, like, the family members and whatnot being there. But what I ended up bringing back for myself, some of it was just stuff for the novelty of it. Like, when we were in, like, some of the bookstores, I ended up buying, like, mangas of the FLCL manga, the Mushishi manga.
Nice.
Then also, like, just kind of picking up light novel books, like, just anything that kind of looked interesting based on the cover, or if I had, like, some kind of idea of what it was. Or
the manga you bought, were they translated already?
No, the ones that I bought while I was in Japan, they were things that I already owned, but I just thought it was kind of cool to have one that was in Japanese, especially because flipping through the FLCL one, I did notice that, I don't know if they edited some of the pages or something, but like the thing that was just baffling when I saw them is, like, you know how in FLCL Conti would like transform into that big giant gun?
Yeah.
Well, apparently there was something else he could do in the manga, but it was never printed in the American version of it, which is basically he spouts a giant club out from his crotch area.
They might have thought that might have been too much for the Western audiences, yeah.
But it was just one of those things, like, I didn't realize that actually happened in the book at all, and I just thought that was kind of cool to do, like, a compare and contrast of the English and the Japanese manga.
Well, it's good because you didn't waste your money, because if you did buy the same thing, even, we do still get imports in the West, so it's good you didn't end up buying the exact same thing. Did you get any DVDs?
No, only because at the time I didn't have like a region-free DVD. Plus, not only that, it is the problem that DVDs in Japan are really, really expensive.
Yes.
And I'm just one of those types that if I'm going to spend a large amount on something, it has to at least bring some kind of like quantity level with it as well.
Smart. That's very smart thinking. Yes.
Especially because I didn't want to end up spending all my money on something that I couldn't use that was only like a few episodes of some anime series.
I think you made the right call.
Yeah. But then I just kind of got like other like novelty things, like buying a fox mask in this like one shopping area. That I forgot what the shopping area was called, but it's more traditional based. Like you just kind of see like handmade items and knickknacks all over the place.
Yeah.
I also ended up buying like a lot of those good luck charms that they sell at temples. Like I ended up getting one that's supposed to be like that was referred to just as victory, and I think it's supposed to bring you luck in sports or other fields of like athleticism or something.
Oh, that's cool. That's great.
And also, I was really addicted to the little capsule machines too, because it was always that thing of going through them and like just seeing whatever series they had of a particular item. Like since, of course, the Evangelion was going on, they had these really cool capsules where you've got like a little assembled. Well, you kind of put it together yourself, but it's like a tiny little model of one of the Ava units, but you can actually pose it. It's like almost kind of like those 3-inch tall G.I. Joe action figures.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. And like I ended up buying a few of those, but I also ended up getting duplicates, so I gave them away to some of my friends as well.
Cool.
And then just other little crazy things, like they had one for Mario items, so I ended up getting a little tiny mushroom that's piggy bank in a way.
Oh.
Yeah. At one point, we did stop in this one temple by the Tokyo Tower, and it was a Buddhist temple and not a Shinto temple, since there is like a difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just kind of looking around and like, because the main thing I was looking for is I kind of wanted to get those, I forget what they're called, the sutra beads.
Do you know what? Sorry, let me go back. Could you explain the difference between the two? Because even I don't even want to pretend that I know. I'm not going to gloss over it. What's the difference between the two temples?
Oh, well, structurally wise, they are very much the same. I will say, like, in most of the Shinto temples we were at, they have, like, a little wash area outside the gates that's supposed to be like a purification method. And it's where you, like, draw water out of this fountain. You rinse one hand, you rinse the other hand, you pour some into your hand again, drink it out of your hand, and then spit out what you had. Or you could drink it as well. They just advise that we probably shouldn't drink it just because our immune systems might not be prepared for what's in the water.
True. Yep, very good health warning from them. Appreciate that.
Yeah. I did notice, like, there were more Shinto temples than there were Buddhist temples. And of course, there's also, like, how the two people of each religion dress. Like, I noticed when we were in the Buddhist temple that all the men kind of had like a dark kind of garb on. And in fact, I think that the temple we were at was also like a school for Buddhism or something. Because when we were kind of looking around the place, we just kind of saw like there was almost like a classroom of young guys with one teacher going over like some of the books with them. And I think also like with the Shinto ones, that's where you see a lot of the like charms and whatnot being sold. Like when we went to some of the Shinto temples we were at, they had these little plaques you could buy, and basically they were kind of like those, you write down your wish and whatnot, and then you hang it up on this area, and the whole thing, if you pray, the wish comes true, that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And I think that was pretty much it. Like I said, we mostly visited just the Shinto temples. The Buddhist one, we were just kind of there on during our free day, since we were visiting Tokyo Tower at the time, and it was nearby anyways. So we figured we'd look at it too.
You know what? Let me ask. This is actually a question I'm interested to ask you.
Yeah.
If you could go back again, and obviously this time let's just hypothetically say you're not forced to go on a tour. What would you actually do? What would be your ideal trip to Japan? What would you do particularly?
Oh man, I think that would be one of those things I would need to like plan so much in
Of
advance
course.
to like figure out the kind of stuff I would want to do because we did end up seeing a lot of cool stuff.
Well, you know what? Let me twist that question on its head
Yeah.
and ask you, what do you regret not doing then?
Hmm. Well, that one's also pretty hard to say because it is like there was one option we could have done, like the free day while we were there. We had the option to go to Tokyo Disney, and personally, I didn't really care that much to go to Tokyo Disney, only because it's like, oh, it's Disneyland. We have that back in America.
Oh, come on. You know, Japanese version of Disney are going to be completely different.
That's true.
Probably not because of trademarking and whatnot, but
Yeah.
I would like to imagine Japanese Mickey Mouse holding a fucking samurai sword or some crazy shit like that. I know I'm being silly, people. I'm just playing about, but something just says Japan plus Disneyland equals mindfuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, hey, I'm putting that on my to-do list. That definitely interests me. Yeah.
And I guess like there is a few other things, but it would have to be like with the right group of people. Like I don't know, Matt Frank from the Spill side, right?
No.
Oh, he's the guy who doing like some of the artwork at IDW. He's doing like some of the Transformer comic books, and he's done a few Godzilla comic books too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thanks for letting us know. Yep.
In fact, you should probably talk to him and try to see if he wants to do a podcast as well, because he actually just got back from Japan a couple of weeks ago too.
Okay, thank you for the heads up.
And especially because he is a massive kaiju fan, and he has like so many stories about actually getting to go to the museum itself, because since he's working on Godzilla comic books, he's in essence working for Toho, the owners of Godzilla. So he got like so much like leeway to go to places that are not open for tourists to go see.
Thank you. That's definitely something I'm going to put on my to-do list, yes.
But yeah, like he has a lot of good stories about going to the like Toho studios and whatnot, and I'm sure he could elaborate like some of the cool stuff he got to go and do. Like if you've ever seen that movie Jiro Dreams of Sushi, like
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't?
No, I haven't.
That is a really fascinating documentary, but
what was the name?
Jiro, Jiro, Dreams of Sushi. Like basically it's a documentary about the most famous sushi maker in Japan, and just like about his life and his family, and it's fascinating, trust me.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Another great tip I'm going to look into.
But the thing is that at one point the movie shows like the fishing market of Japan, and if you're like a person who's interested in like cooking or fishing and whatnot, that's like a definite area to go and look at. But it's really hard to say because there was like just so much stuff to do that it's kind of hard to figure out what you didn't get a chance to do at some points. Unless I was.
It's fine. I was just basically asking top of your head, not asking for a definitive answer right now. So that's not a problem. Obviously, you might come up with more ideas later. And again, hopefully this won't be the last time we have you on the podcast anyway. So we might be asking you to elaborate on this more. But you know what? We've come to the end of my personal questioning.
Yeah.
So Joe, I want to ask you. You was out there for 11 days, is that right?
Yeah.
Apart from everything we've already covered, is there anything else you want to let us know about your story, your adventure in Japan? Anything else you forgot to mention you want to bring up now?
A few other things. Like one thing I will say, you do owe it to yourself to go to the museum in Hiroshima for the atom bomb museum. I forget what the museum is called itself. Like it might just be the Hiroshima War Museum. But it's one of those things you need to go and visit. Especially if you're an American, you will probably feel really, really shitty by the time you come out of it. Because like the museum, it just kind of leaves you in awe seeing like the kind of stuff that happened over there. And they have in display cases, like stuff that they pulled out of the wreckage of Hiroshima from like the like there was an old uniform that was like pretty much in tatter after the explosion, or like this unicycle that was practically half melted from the bomb. And I will say the most haunting thing of all is that they have this mechanical clock in the front area, and it says, like on the top half, how long it has been since the bombing of Hiroshima. And so there's like a clock showing like how many years, how many months, weeks, days, all that kind of stuff. But then underneath it is showing when was the last time there was nuclear testing going on. And the thing was, like at the time, that was when there was a lot of North Korea testing out nuclear bombs in the oceans and whatnot. So basically, when I looked at that clock, it said it had only been like 60 days since then. And I was like, oh man, that's pretty chilling.
It's pretty intense. Wow. I mean, just the clock alone, going back to the 1940s, when just having the clock, that's very, very intense. Very touchy subject. And as an American, you saying that, I find that very interesting. Ironically, I'm going to just expose my own ignorance here. I didn't even know that the Japanese would have a museum. It makes perfect sense they would. It's obviously one of the most definitive events in all of human history, period, anyway,
Oh, yeah.
And people, if you haven't seen the anime Barefoot Gen, which clearly illustrates the whole devastation of that whole nuclear blast, it's just mind-blowing, the whole thing. World War II, I mean, in general, it's just, you saying that, I understand. As a human being, you would want to see that. Some people think, oh, that's a buzzkill, man. But you know what?
Yeah.
This is real life, and I have an interest in history. I've mentioned this before on the podcast multiple times.
Yeah.
And that is something I would 100% want to see. So I really thank you for bringing it up, because I was even ignorant to them even having that. But obviously, it's such a fundamental part of Japanese history. For better or for worse, it makes sense they would have that museum there. So yes,
yeah. And because I mean, it's just like going to something like the Holocaust Museum up in Washington D.C. or is it in New York? I can't remember which one. But it's one of those things. Like, yeah, it is a really ugly part of history, but it's one of those things that you learn it and you're just kind of in awe from it, especially because like. There was like so much more stuff I learned about it history-wise. Like at the time of it, like I knew we had bombed the area, but the thing that just kind of like really made me feel shitty as an American was that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were not military cities and whatnot. They basically just chose those cities to be like testing grounds for the weapon itself.
Yeah.
And so it was like people that weren't really fully connected to the war outside of being Japanese and whatnot. And it was like, oh man, that makes me feel terrible.
Yeah, they really wanted to. That was the point. Basically, hit it where it hurts. It wasn't. It was meant for civilian, thingy. And ironically, a lot of people would say, "Oh, you fucking Americans! They were never hit by America." I mean, that's the funny thing about World War II. I think. Because obviously America's a different part of the world, Germany didn't actually get to reach there. Obviously, there was a lot of American casualties. I'm not going to dispute that at all, and I'm not trying to make light of the situation. Yeah. I'm just saying that America was not directly hit in terms of landmass by the war physically, where the rest of Europe was. All of the rest, almost every other country apart from America was actually physically hit, apart from America. But, everyone has their own wars, and I'm just for your information, people who don't know. I know some people don't care. I know for some people this is too dark or whatever, but again, it's real life and it's relevant. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it is a very important thing to see if you're going to go there, and especially if it's more that you're vacationing there to learn about the place. It is a must visit, at least.
Yeah. As an anime fan, I think it's, you love Grave of the Fireflies, you love Barefoot Ken, it's like a part of anime history anyway. It's relevant, man. So yeah, definitely. So was there anything else you wanted to add as well?
I will also say, though, be adventurous with the food, but also be kind of careful with what you're getting. Because I made a lot of enemies in the group I was with the stuff I was getting. Especially because we were in a convenience store, because we were just about to go on a bullet train to get to our next destination. And I saw that they had, like, in a vacuum-sealed bag, a thing of dried squid. And I thought, well, this is probably like the equivalent of like beef jerky in a way. And I've always seen like in animes how people have like dried squid and they just kind of like chew on it for a couple of hours or so on. And like even the tour guide I was talking with, she said that's a really popular thing if you like beer because it's real salty and smoky tasting. The problem came is that we were on the bullet train. And that's when I decided to open it up. And that thing might as well have been a bomb of smell because the second that thing hit the fresh air, people 5 rows down behind me were yelling, "What the hell is that smell?" And I mean, the Japanese didn't mind it because I'm sure like they're just used to it because, as I said, it's something people will eat if they're drinking beer or whatnot. It's kind of a like side snack in a way, but the people I was with were just not prepared for it.
You see, you're getting another warning, people. It's good to know. Etiquette. Thank you, Kimono. We're learning. We learn from your mistakes, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
Learn from your mistakes. Yeah. Come on, give us some more juicy tidbits. Anything else you want to add? Give us more.
I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there was this island that we visited at one point. Like, it's off of Hiroshima, and this was also part of the tour of it. But this little island, they have like wild deer all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone remembers an episode of that series, Lucky Star, they actually showed the kind of problem I was having, that these deers, they're almost domesticated in a way, but still like wild at the same time, in that they will let you pet them and all that. But if you have anything loose whatsoever, they will try to eat it. Because it's this whole thing, a lot of tourists end up like pulling leaves off of the tree and feeding it to them. And then they start like almost hassling around the person trying to get more leaves out of them. Or if you have like money hanging out of your pocket, they might try to eat that. If you have trash, they'll try to eat that. They're almost like goats in a way. Like they'll just eat anything.
They sound like goats.
Yeah, and it's also like they will surround you quickly too. But I mean, they're also like really interesting to watch as well, especially because when we were walking around, we saw one that was sitting down and it like had full antlers and everything. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. This thing's just like sitting there. Because especially in Texas, I mean, we got deers here, but the problem is that they're so skittish and afraid of people that they always like hightail it out of any area at the slightest sound.
Yeah.
So, but these things, for tourists, they're just kind of a fun thing to look at. For the locals at the place, they're just kind of more of a nuisance. They're like stray cats almost. Like I would see a guy who ran like a little snack stand, like banging on the side of the wall trying to get one to shoo off.
Wow. Yeah, that's another interesting tidbit, Mr. Joe. More for us?
Ah, man.
I know I'm squeezing you tight. I know. But you getting that all out because when it's done, you'll be like, oh, but hey, just remember, even if you don't remember everything you want to add, people might be casting you on the comment section. You can always add it in a comment. And like I said, hopefully this won't be the last time ever on the podcast anyway. So.
All right. Oh, there was one thing I realized that was something I really wanted to do but never got a chance to.
And what's that?
I think it's in Tokyo, if I remember correctly, but I hear that there is a museum all dedicated to Miyazaki and, like, Studio Ghibli.
Yeah, not a surprise.
And, like, I couldn't remember what it was called, and I just didn't have time to look it up because the problem was when we were over there, we didn't have any cell phones that were international working or anything.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a great thing to bring up. Any anime fan, I mean, when it comes to Studio Ghibli, world-renowned.
Mm-hmm.
world renowned. And if you're an anime fan, you would think that would be on your top 5 list to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the closest we got was while we were in Hakone, there was an entire store that seemed to be dedicated to Studio Ghibli, but more so on My Neighbor Totoro, because they had like big, huge displays of like stuffed animals or figurines and whatnot to it.
Yeah, one of the most popular ones.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. That I love that movie as well.
Mm-hmm. It's a classic.
Did I rinse out your brain, Kimono Joe? Have you got any morsels left in there?
I think so. I mean, it's one of those things that's been so long, and those are like the things that still stand out the most. I'm sure there was like other little things, but one thing, if you ever come across like an area that's selling pastries and you see a little pastry that looks like an apple, by all means, get that thing. It is so delicious. Like,
okay.
Yeah, because I forgot what it is, but it's like an outside layer of bread that's been like kind of glazed with food coloring or something to look like the exterior of an apple. And they have like a little cinnamon stick sticking out of the top of it at like a stem almost. But on the inside of it, it's like chopped up apple cinnamon like sauce in it.
Wow, that sounds delicious.
Oh yeah, and it's warm and it's just tasty. And it's like, oh my god, if I could open up a bakery and sell nothing but this, I would be happy.
You might be rich too. Yeah. That sounds amazing. That sounds awesome, man.
Yeah.
Wow, Joe, you've given us a lot of food for thought on this episode, man. Your trip to Japan sounded like a good time, even though it sounded like you were kind of constricted in what you wanted to do, but you sound like someone who's a bit worldly, so learning about all these things as part of the educational tour sound like something that you did get to enjoy anyway.
Oh yeah, because I know that, like, for me, that was the stuff I really liked to see, but I know, like, some of the people we were traveling in the groups, they got tired of going to see the temples and the palaces, because admittedly, we did do a lot of that, because, like, each of the main stops were to be spent, like, at the different temples and the historical significance to them and whatnot. But for me, I just loved every minute of it, so I didn't care. We could have gone to temples all day, and I would have been fine with it.
Yeah, man, sounds great. It sounds like the place to be. It really does sound like, not even as an anime fan, it sounds just like as a place to go as a traveler. It sounds very interesting, and I definitely want to go there.
Oh yeah.
I have my own reservations though. Obviously, I have my own misconceptions as well. And being a black British guy, I don't know how well I will be taken there. I'm a bit scared, to be perfectly honest with you, Kimono Joe.
Well, you could probably blend in with those guys that were trying to hustle money out of my brother and I to buy really bad clothing.
Those guys were black. I think you did say they were Jamaicanish, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, I spoke about it with another friend who has been to Japan many times, and he said they're not Jamaican, but I just can't remember, it is like one of the like more Caribbean-based island areas, or it might be like up in like areas like Hawaii or so. But
yeah, that's the thing, because Japanese people are known for being very somewhat antisocial and closed off, and obviously, I'm sorry, people, I don't know, maybe it's just me. I have a lot of black friends, whether it's British or American. You know, I don't know how well. Even if it's not Japan, even other parts of Europe, there's some kind of, I don't want to say racial tension, but sometimes you could feel a way. This is why I even asked you as a Caucasian guy how it felt to be out there, because I'm wondering, even after everything you told me, if I went to Japan, how it would be. And on the next episode, when we speak to Habib, because he's different ethnic origin than both of us, I want to see if he had a different experience to you, because it's good to know. For better or for worse, it's good to know it. It's good to know, man.
And that will be one thing. I did forget to mention this, because, like I said, I have a friend who goes to Japan pretty regularly. And he has mentioned that it's just like in any other parts of the world, that anywhere that's not tourist heavy, there is like a level of tolerance and whatnot. Because it's just like in America, if you're at a high tourist location, you don't mind the stuff that's out of the norm. But the further you go to like the more countryside areas, that's where there's like just maybe a little bit more ignorance. Like he has said himself, because he does speak more Japanese than I do, that he's had like people out in countryside areas and he could understand them making like racial slurs about him.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's just that kind of thing. It's the level of tolerance and education, because, it's the same here in America. You go from, like, the big cities out to the southern backwoods, no one gives a damn type area, and you're going to get the racist, ignorant people who just don't know any better.
Well, ironically, you bringing it up. You're in Texas. Spill.com crew are based in Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
I've heard Spill crew say themselves, and, Corey Coleman's black, Leon's black. He's like, there's some part of Texas you still don't want to go to as a black man.
Oh, yeah.
So that's America in 2013, people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what country you are, there's always going to be racial imbalances in every country, and obviously maybe I'm just being paranoid, maybe my worries are unjustified or whatever, but hey, I'm human, man.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously, in other parts of Europe and maybe Japan, maybe, there isn't so much black people there, but ultimately, I'll tell you this, isn't going to stop me from going. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. But hey, man, I mean, if you are ever coming down to Texas for Spill.com, or because God willing, me and my brother, we really want to go back to Japan. But hey, if you ever want to come with that, we'll try to rope you in.
I am actually coming to America this year because, off-topic people, I know, maybe you don't even know this, I'm turning 30 this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm coming down to America to see, hopefully, my co-host in California. And I want to make a trip down to Texas as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so hopefully I can chill with some Spillios.
Yeah.
I'll keep you apprised. I would like to meet you as well in person. So hopefully if I come down there, we can maybe arrange to meet up or something.
Yeah.
But I'll keep you apprised, man. But, man, I believe I've squeezed you for all the information at the moment. I know that you probably can't remember 100%.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable with what we've done on this episode right now, Kimono Joe?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm an open book anyway, so there was nothing for me to hide. So I'm really comfortable with this way.
You've been a true gentleman, a true American gentleman. And, your trip sounded very interesting. That guy that you went with that had that problem sounded hilarious, throwing shit off the roof and tearing hentai mangas up. And that's some funny stories, man. Some funny shit. So, also, I'm going to put a link to you actually made a YouTube video slideshow.
Yeah.
I'm going to be putting a link to that in the video if you don't mind as well.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I don't really use my YouTube account anymore. That was just something I made at the time. But yeah, feel free to post that.
Yep, I will. I want the people to see. And man, you've been a great guest. I'm glad I had you on. Again, the open invitation to you. You can listen to the podcast, our previous episodes. We're on Spill.com. We're still somewhat unknown, even though the podcast has been featured more than a few times. But Anime and Spill, it's like oil and water. And I'm really trying my best to make it mix, and we've got a lot of members there that are participating and are shouting, but having you on the podcast is helping, and I'm sure a lot of people people like you, just based on the whole Brony podcast you did. I hope that, you get to bring people that you think like anime on Spill.com onto our group. And, like I said, I hope to have you on again in future episodes.
All right. And just let me know. I mean, I'd love to be on again.
Yeah, we mostly do anime reviews and other discussions as well. So you just keep apprised. Let me know if there's any anime you want to talk about. Any anime. Hopefully we don't like, I'll say this for the record. People already know this. We don't like talking about the most popular titles because every other podcast is doing that.
Yeah.
The title you brought up in the beginning, the French one, that's the kind of obscure thing no one's really talking about. We like to highlight things that people are not talking about so much.
Oh, yeah, definitely. If you're going to do one on Walk Fu, definitely have me on, because that has by far been one of my favorite series lately.
All right. Well, I'm gonna get in contact with you about that. We might have an official review with you on. Well, I would love to. I would just want to watch it, and then we can both do a review for it if you're up for it.
All right. Sounds good to me.
People look forward to that. I'm gonna get on that. I'm gonna put that on my to-do list. Kimono Joe, you've been a great guest. Is there any last comments you'd like to give to your listeners, our listeners, before we go?
Do you mind if I plug my DeviantArt account?
Of course I don't. Of course. Anything you want, your email address, the website, it's all going to be, I'm going to put the links directly in there anyway, but give out the information by voice as well. Go ahead.
Well, this is basically because I don't have too many sites to myself, but basically I have been trying to learn the draw lately, and I do need feedback on my work, especially because lately no one posts anything, because I do need constructive criticism on how I can improve and whatnot. So if you're an artist, please, that's really what I need help with too. But my DeviantArt account is Infinity Joe, which it's Infinity-Joe.
Okay. Do you have a Facebook or Twitter account you'd like to give out as well?
I just have a Facebook account. I haven't used Twitter that much, but it's under Joseph Compton. And if you do want to friend me, though, just at least let me know that you heard the podcast and whatnot, because sometimes I get those random friend requests that's actually just one of those people trying to spam Facebook and whatnot. Yeah. So I'm always a little hesitant about people that I don't really know too well.
Okay. I'm going to put all the links directly in the post anyway, so people, if you can't spell, don't worry about it. I'll put the links in the description so you can just click on it and add Joe. But yeah, please people, no fake addresses, and at least message the man on Spill or any other way to let him know that you're going to add him beforehand.
Oh yeah, and I forgot about my Spill account, just Kimono Joe, which that as well I don't really update too much, but I do answer the emails and whatnot.
Yeah, you were very swift when I contacted you. Very swift. Really appreciate that.
Not a problem, sir.